The first mistake was putting the human girl in the beginner lane. That is what I told the disciplinary board later. After the academy gym went silent, after 12 senior cadets forgot how to laugh, after Instructor Vale stopped calling Earth a soft world statistical error and began using the phrase controlled hazard with actual fear in his voice. But at 0700 that morning, none of us knew any of that. We only saw a new transfer student standing under the white lights of Combat Hall 3, small enough to miss if you were not looking directly at her, wearing a gray training suit 2 sizes too plain and carrying no visible confidence at all. Her name was Emma Hayes. Human. Female. 5 feet 5 inches. 128 pounds, according to the intake file projected above her head for the entire class to judge. And yes, we judged. Of course we did. The Galactic Defense Academy did not train diplomats or poets or whatever humans like to pretend counted as survival work. It trained command candidates from worlds where gravity shaped bone, storms sharpened reflexes, and children learned early that hesitation was a luxury. Around Emma stood Vorga towerlings with shoulders like cargo doors, Silith runners whose feet blurred when they moved, and my own people, the Quran, built in 1.4 standard gravity and proud enough to make that everyone else's problem. Then there was the human, standing in academy-issued shoes, blinking calmly at the arena floor like she was waiting for a bus in Ohio. Someone behind me clicked their mandibles in amusement. Someone else whispered, "Is that really the Death World species?" The word Death World made half the class snort. Earth had become a joke before Emma ever arrived. Yes, the charts said her planet had unstable weather, high oxygen, dense predators, venomous organisms, freezing zones, burning deserts, ocean pressure, tectonic tantrums, and microbes with absolutely no respect for personal boundaries. But that was data. Data did not look impressive when it came packaged in a quiet girl with a ponytail and an expression so neutral it felt almost rude. Instructor Vale stepped onto the mat, all 8 feet of him, armored crest. Raised, voice booming through the hall speakers. "Cadets, today's assessment is simple. Balance under pressure, resistance under force, adaptation under humiliation." His eyes turned toward Emma when he said that last word. The class noticed. Emma noticed too. She did not react. That made it worse somehow. Vale tapped his wrist console, and the beginner lane lit up blue, the color reserved for injured students, first-year juveniles, and species with medical exemptions. Laughter rolled through the hall, sharp and ugly. Emma looked at the blue lane, then at the instructor. "Is that mine, sir?" she asked. Her voice was polite. Too polite. Vale smiled with all his teeth. "For your safety, Cadet Hayes. We would not want Earth's representative damaged on her first day." More laughter. A Vorga cadet near the front leaned down and said, loud enough for everyone, "Careful, human. The floor might push back." Emma glanced at him once. Not angry, not embarrassed, just measuring. I remember that look now better than I remember my own name. At the time, I thought it was confusion. I thought she did not understand she was being mocked in front of 47 future officers and one very satisfied instructor. Then Vale increased the lane gravity to half standard, a level used for warm-ups, and announced, "Begin when ready." Every alien in that hall expected the human to stumble, wobble, maybe blush that strange mammal pink. Emma stepped onto the blue line, rolled one shoulder, and looked down at the glowing gravity marker. Half standard. She frowned. Not with fear, with disappointment. Then she raised her hand. "Sir," she said, "is the machine supposed to be on?" The laugh that followed should have been louder. It should have filled Combat Hall 3 from wall to wall, bounced off the reinforced glass, and followed Emma Hayes all the way back to whatever soft little dorm room the Academy had assigned her. Instead, it came out uneven. A few clicks, a few coughs, one nervous trill from the Silith row. Because the human had not asked if the machine was on like a student trying to be clever. She had asked like someone noticing the classroom lights were dim. Instructor Vale's crest lifted another inch. That was never a good sign. "The machine is functioning, Cadet Hayes." "Understood, sir." Emma looked at the glowing blue lane again, then placed both feet inside the marked zone. The gravity field shimmered around her ankles. The floor plates hummed. Every cadet knew that sound. It was the Academy's way of saying your body was about to learn humility. Emma waited. Nothing happened. Or rather, nothing visible happened. Her knees did not bend. Her shoulders did not dip. Her breathing stayed so steady that the biometric display above her lane had to refresh twice, as if it distrusted the numbers it was receiving. Heart rate, 72. Muscle strain, minimal. Balance deviation, 0.3 inches. Vale stared at the readout. Then he smiled again, but this one had edges. Perhaps Earth physiology requires a stronger demonstration. He raised the setting to 1 standard gravity. The blue lane shifted to green. That was the level most cadets used for basic drills. A Quran first year could manage it. A Vorga could sprint through it. A fragile exchange student should have at least noticed. Emma did notice. She bounced once on the balls of her feet, not high, just enough to test the resistance. Better, she said. Not arrogant. Not loud. Somehow worse. The Vorga cadet who had mocked her earlier muttered, "She thinks standing is an achievement." That brought some laughter back. Good laughter. Safe laughter. The kind that told us the universe still made sense. Vale gestured to the first obstacle, a row of pressure pylons sliding across the lane at random intervals. The assignment was simple. Walk from one end to the other without being pushed outside the field. Every species hated this test because the pylons did not strike hard, but they embarrassed you precisely. A tap to the shoulder. A shove to the hip. A neat little reminder that balance was not confidence. Vale folded his arms. Proceed. Emma walked. Not charged. Not performed. Walked. The first pylon slid toward her left side. She shifted half an inch, and it passed behind her. The second came low. She stepped over it without looking down. The third and fourth crossed together, a pattern that usually forced cadets to stop and reset. Emma turned sideways, let both pass, and kept moving. By the fifth pylon, the hall had gone quiet again. By the eighth, the Silith runners had stopped whispering. By the 12th, I realized the machine was no longer testing her. It was trying to catch up. Vale's smile disappeared. He flicked his wrist console. The lane turned yellow. 1.5 standard gravity. A warning tone chimed. Emma paused at the center marker and looked back. Should I continue, sir? That question did something unpleasant to the room. It sounded respectful, but it landed like a challenge. Vale's jaw tightened. Unless Earth cadets require rest after walking. Emma nodded. No, sir. Then she continued. At 1.5 gravity, most species changed shape. Spines compressed. Steps shortened. Pride became heavier. Emma's posture adjusted, but only slightly, like a runner leaning into wind. Her ponytail shifted over one shoulder. Her hands stayed relaxed. The pylon sequence sped up. She moved through it with small, efficient motions, each one clean enough to feel insulting. She was not fighting the field. She was conserving energy inside it. The Vorga cadet beside me stopped grinning. That is abnormal, he said. I wanted to agree. I wanted to say the sensors were wrong, or the human had illegal implants, or Earth had lied on every biological report it had ever submitted. But then Emma reached the end of the lane, turned around, and waited for instructions like she had finished a warm-up at a suburban gym. Instructor Vale stared at her for 3 full seconds. In academy time, that was an eternity. Then his voice came through the speakers, lower than before. Again, Emma blinked once. Yes, sir. And that was when the beginner lane changed from yellow to orange. Orange meant evaluation protocol had stopped pretending this was a beginner exercise. Orange meant the lane was no longer measuring whether a cadet could stay upright. It was measuring how long Pride could survive before biology filed a complaint. 2 standard gravities settled over the floor with a deep mechanical growl, and every cadet in Combat Hall 3 felt it in their teeth, even from outside the field. The air seemed heavier near Emma now, compressed and shimmering, like the room itself had decided she was taking up too much confidence. Instructor Vale did not announce the new setting. He did not have to. The number appeared above the lane in bright academy text, impossible to miss, impossible to misunderstand. 2.0. For most species, that was where training became medical paperwork. Emma looked at the display, then at her shoes. That is closer, she said quietly. I heard it because the hall had become so silent that even the ventilation fans sounded embarrassed. The Vorga cadet near me made a small noise in his throat and immediately pretended he had not. Vale's crest flattened, then rose again. He walked to the control stand and activated the second sequence. Balance pylons withdrew into the floor. In their place, 12 floating impact rings rose from hidden slots, each one glowing white. each one programmed to change direction the moment a cadet predicted its path. This was not a walking drill anymore. This was adaptive pressure training, the kind used on third-year combat candidates, the kind that made confident students discover religion. Since you find the Academy's safety settings insufficient, Vale said, voice smooth and sharp, you may demonstrate movement under layered resistance. Emma gave one small nod. Yes, sir. Not yes, I will try. Not yes. Please lower it if my fragile human bones begin sending farewell letters. Just yes, sir. The first ring shot forward. She stepped inside it before it could adjust. The second dropped from above. She ducked, turned, and let it pass over her shoulder with less than an inch to spare. The third came from the side. She caught its edge with one hand, not stopping it, just redirecting its glide so it circled behind her and collided harmlessly with the fourth. That was when someone whispered, did she just use the equipment against itself? Yes. Yes, she had. And worse, she looked bored doing it. Not disrespectful. Not lazy. Bored in the way a person gets bored when asked to solve a puzzle meant for children after already paying taxes. Vale increased the ring. Speed by 20%. Emma changed rhythm. He added floor shifts. She adjusted her stance. He reduced warning lights. She stopped watching the lights entirely and started listening to the motors beneath the panels. That detail ruined me. I saw her head tilt half a degree before each motion, like she was reading the arena through sound. Quran hearing was supposed to be superior. Vorga muscle was supposed to be superior. Silith reaction speed was supposed to be superior. Yet there was this human girl, under twice the gravity, inside an exercise designed to humiliate her, turning our advantages into a checklist of things that suddenly felt optional. The public humiliation had reversed direction without asking permission. Vale knew it. The class knew it. Emma seemed to be the only one not enjoying it. Then the orange lane flashed red at the edges. Not because Vale ordered it. Because the system had detected a performance anomaly and requested instructor confirmation for escalation. A warning line appeared across the display. Candidate exceeds beginner lane tolerance. Recommend transfer to advanced field. Vale stared at those words as if they had insulted his ancestors. Emma stood in the center of the lane, breathing slightly faster now, but still calm, still balanced, still waiting. Cadet Hayes, Vale said, have you received prior off-world combat training? Emma shook her head. No, sir. His eyes narrowed. Then where did you learn adaptive movement under variable gravity? She looked confused for the first time all morning. I played soccer, sir. The entire hall froze. Vale blinked. Soccer? Yes, sir. Since I was 6. Somewhere behind me, a Silith cadet whispered, with genuine horror. Their children train like this? And Emma, still standing in 2 standard gravities, had the terrible manners to answer honestly. Not exactly, sir. Usually there is more running. The word soccer did more damage to Instructor Vale's authority than any insult could have managed. You could see it moving through the class, slow and poisonous, as 47 cadets tried to understand how a childhood game from a supposedly fragile species had just been compared to advanced combat conditioning. The Vorga cadet who had mocked Emma earlier looked personally betrayed by physics. The Silith runners began whispering so fast their translators gave up and displayed processing error. I stood there with my arms folded, pretending I was analyzing her technique, when in truth I was reconsidering every report I had ever read about Earth. Vale recovered first, because authority figures have a talent for mistaking embarrassment for strategy. He turned away from Emma and addressed the room. A single unusual performance does not prove superiority. It proves unfamiliar variables. That sounded reasonable. That sounded professional. That sounded like a teacher desperately trying to put the universe back where he had found it. Emma said nothing. She stood in the red-edged lane, hands loose, face calm, waiting for the next command as if none of us had laughed at her 10 minutes earlier. That was starting to annoy people more than any boasting could have. A boast can be challenged. Calm has to be survived. Vale lifted one clawed hand toward the senior row. Cadet Brack. Center field. Oh, Brack. Of course. Every academy has one. The student too large to ignore, too useful to discipline, and too proud to understand the difference between confidence and volume. Brack was Vorga, nearly 7 feet tall, built like a moving wall, with 4 heavy arms and the kind of smile that made smaller students suddenly remember appointments elsewhere. He had dominated the resistance course since first term. He did not walk to the field. He performed walking, each step loud enough to remind everyone that mass was an argument. As he passed Emma, he leaned down. "Do not worry, little earthling. I will show you how adults train." Emma looked up at him. Not far up, but enough. "Okay," she said. That was all. Just okay. Somehow it made Brack's smile twitch. Vale keyed the main arena, not the beginner lane. The floor opened into a circular platform 40 feet across, with moving panels, weighted air currents, pressure rings, and variable gravity zones layered together. This was the public field, the one used during academy demonstrations when donors visited and everyone. Pretended training injuries were character building. The display set itself to Brack's profile. 1.4 standard gravities. Heavy resistance. High impact simulation. Brack rolled his shoulders and stepped inside. He was good. I hated that he was good, but he was. He powered through the first sequence with raw strength, shoving resistance fields aside, planting his feet when the panel shifted, forcing the rings to bounce off his upper arms. The class cheered. Relief returned to the room like oxygen. There it was. Normality. Size mattered again. Muscle mattered again. Brack finished with a theatrical stomp that made the nearest floor lights flicker. His score appeared above him. 91%. Excellent by academy standards. Annoyingly excellent by any standard. Brack turned to Emma and spread all four arms. "Your turn, soccer champion." Laughter came back, but weaker this time, like it wanted permission. Bill did not smile. He studied Emma for a moment, then did something petty enough to be educational. He left Brack's settings in place. Same gravity, same resistance, same heavy species calibration. For Emma, that should have been unfair. It was designed for a Vorga body almost twice her mass. The pressure rings would hit too high. The floor timing would assume longer stride length. The resistance fields would meet her center of gravity in all the wrong places. Emma stepped to the arena edge and looked at the display. "Sir, this is his setting." Vale's voice was cold. "You may decline." Brack laughed. "Smart choice." Emma tied her ponytail tighter. "I was just checking." Then she stepped in. The arena scanned her. The system paused. A yellow warning flashed. Calibration mismatch. Vale ignored it. Brack crossed his arms, pleased with himself. The first panel dropped beneath Emma's right foot. She did not fall. She used the drop. Her body lowered with it, turned, and came up already moving. The first pressure ring swept toward her chest at Brack height, which meant it passed over her shoulder without touching her. The second came too wide. She slid inside its arc. The third was meant to force a heavy cadet backward. Emma went forward instead. Not fast. Clean. Efficient. Like she had read the machine's intentions and found them dramatic. By the fifth movement, the cheering had stopped. By the eighth, Brack's arms uncrossed. By the 10th, Vale's console began recommending emergency recalibration because the arena could not decide whether Emma Hayes was a cadet or a system error. She reached the center marker, tapped it once with 2 fingers, and looked back at the instructor. "Sir," she asked, still polite, "is this the adult version?" The problem with asking whether something is the adult version is that sometimes the adults in the room take it personally. Instructor Vale's face did not change much, because his species considered visible emotion a weakness, but his crest flattened so hard against his skull that every Quran in the hall recognized the warning. Brack recognized it too. The big Vorga stopped smirking and took one careful step back from the edge of the arena. That should have been our first clue. When the bully gets quiet, the instructor is about to make a mistake. Vale walked to the main control pedestal instead of using his wrist console. The pedestal was sealed behind a transparent safety hood, the kind used only for demonstration finals, emergency drills, and training exercises that required medical staff to stand close enough to look nervous. He placed his palm against the authorization pad. The arena lights dimmed from white to deep amber. Above the circular platform, the system display erased Brack's profile and loaded a new one. Instructor override. Combined adaptive sequence. Gravity, variable. Resistance, variable. Momentum traps, active. Environmental distraction, active. My stomach tightened. Momentum traps were not strikes. They were worse for pride. They made your own movement betray you. Step too hard, and the floor slid. Lean too far, and the air pushed back. Overcorrect, and the arena politely introduced your dignity to the nearest wall padding. Emma watched the display with her head slightly tilted. Is this still balance training, sir? Vale's voice came down like cold metal. This is Academy standard for cadets who question Academy standards. That was unfair. Everyone knew it. Nobody said so. Brack found the floor very interesting. The Silith row went still. Even the observation drones above us adjusted their lenses, as if the machines wanted a better view of the coming embarrassment. Emma did not argue. She did not complain about calibration. She did not mention that the sequence had been designed for senior candidates with 2 years of preparation and bones built for heavier worlds. She just inhaled once, rolled her ankles, and stepped to the starting mark. The timer appeared. 3 minutes. Survive the sequence. Touch the markers in order. Remain inside the ring. Simple instructions. Terrible implications. The first 10 seconds were almost normal. The floor shifted left. Emma shifted with it. A resistance wall formed in front of her. She angled through the weak edge instead of pushing against it. 2 air currents crossed behind her, trying to force a stumble. She dropped her center of gravity and let them pass. Not dramatic. Not flashy. Clean. Then the arena got serious. Gravity spiked to 2.3 standard on the inner lane. The outer lane fell to 0.6. The center panels began rotating in opposite directions. 3 markers lit at once, each one 20 feet apart, each one active for only 4 seconds. That was when most cadets failed. Not because they lacked strength, but because their brains tried to solve one problem at a time. Emma moved like she did not believe in one problem at a time. She planted her left foot in heavy gravity, pushed into the light zone, crossed the rotating panel before it finished turning, and tapped the first marker with 2 fingers. The second marker rose behind her. She did not turn fully. She pivoted on her heel, leaned backward into a pressure current, and let it carry her just far enough to reach it. The class made a sound together. Not laughter, not cheering. Something smaller. Something afraid to become respect too soon. The third marker appeared above shoulder height for Brack, which meant above Emma's head. The arena expected a Vorga to reach. Emma jumped. Not high by human standards, maybe 3 feet. In 2.3 standard gravity, it looked offensive. Her fingers touched the light, and she landed without wasted motion. Vale's console flashed again. Performance beyond expected mass profile. Recalibration recommended. Vale dismissed it. His pride had apparently declared war on software. The sequence intensified. Visual distractions filled the air, bright false markers, fake floor gaps, sudden warning tones. Emma ignored most of them. She watched shadows. She listened to servos. She tracked air movement against her sleeves. Every small detail we had dismissed as human limitation became some unfair little advantage. 2 eyes forward meant focus. Small frame meant tighter turns. No crest, no tail, no secondary limbs meant fewer targets for the arena to confuse. She was not winning because she was stronger than the test. She was winning because the test had been designed by people who thought strength only came in large sizes. With 20 seconds left, the final marker appeared at the center of the platform. Vale increased gravity one last time. 3 standard. A warning alarm sounded. Emma slowed for the first time. 1 step. 2. Her knees bent. Her shoulders tightened. The hall leaned forward with her. Brack whispered, "There." Finally, Emma looked at the marker, then smiled a little. Not at Brack. Not at Vale. At the floor. "Okay," she said. Then she stopped walking and started running. The moment Emma Hayes ran, the Academy stopped breathing. Not metaphorically. The hall's atmospheric monitors registered a measurable drop in vocal output from 47 cadets, 1 instructor, and 3 observation assistants behind a glass. Later, the report would call it collective attention compression, which was a very expensive way of saying everyone forgot to make noise. 3 standard gravities pressed down on the center platform. That meant Emma's 128 pounds was suddenly acting like 384. On most Academy worlds, that was the kind of load you trained for with machines, straps, supervisors, and a very sincere respect for your joints. Emma treated it like the last quarter mile of a bad practice. Her first running step landed hard enough to make the arena sensor spike. Her second came faster. Her third found the edge of a rotating floor plate exactly as it turned under her. Instead of fighting the motion, she used it, letting the panel spin her hips through the turn and send her toward the center marker like the machine had volunteered to help. Instructor Vale's hand froze above the control pedestal. Brack's mouth opened slightly. I remember that detail because I had never seen a Vorga look small before. The resistance field snapped up between Emma and the marker, a transparent wall of force calibrated to slow a heavy cadet without throwing them off course. Emma did not slow. She lowered her shoulder, not to hit it, not to break it, but to slide along the angled seam where two field generators overlapped. It was a flaw so narrow most of us had never noticed it existed. She passed through with a sharp shimmer of static across her sleeve, came out the other side, and kept running. The final marker pulsed red. 3 seconds active. 2 seconds. 1. Emma dove forward, stretched one hand, and tapped it with the tips of 2 fingers half a second before it vanished. The timer stopped. The arena did not. That was the problem. The system had been pushed out of rhythm by her movement. It expected momentum in one direction, weight in another, recovery time after each obstacle, hesitation after each warning tone. Emma had given it none of those things. The floor panels tried to reset while she was still moving. A pressure current rose under her right side. A rotating plate slid left. The gravity field flickered, not off, not unsafe, just confused in the way expensive technology gets confused when reality refuses to fill out the correct form. Emma rolled with it. Shoulder to floor, hand down, feet under her, back up. Smooth. Controlled. Annoyingly human. Then the main display flashed a score. Completion, 100%. Time remaining, 0.4 seconds. Efficiency rating, recalculating. That last word stayed there too long. Recalculating. 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 We stared at it like it might apologize. Instead, the screen changed to a symbol none of us had ever seen during live assessment. Manual review required. Instructor Vale slowly turned toward the observation glass. The assistants behind it were already whispering into comms. Emma stood in the center of the arena with one hand on her knee, breathing hard now. Actually hard, which should have comforted us. It did not, because she was smiling. Not a victory smile. Not a cruel smile. The small, tired smile of someone who had just remembered why she liked moving in the first place. Brack found his voice first. That was a trick. Emma looked over at him. Her breathing steadied. Probably. The class shifted. Brack stepped closer to the arena boundary, trying to gather the room back around himself. You used bad calibration. Emma nodded. Yes. That answer hit harder than denial would have. Brack blinked. So you admit it. The calibration was wrong for me, she said. So I used what it gave me. Vale's eyes narrowed. Explain. Emma straightened. Sir, the field expected someone bigger, slower to turn, longer in stride, heavier in the upper body. It kept opening spaces it thought were useless. She paused, then added, They were not useless to me. Nobody laughed. That was the first time all morning nobody even tried. Vale looked back at the arena readout, then at the human girl who had just turned an unfair setup into a private shortcut. His voice dropped lower. Cadet Hayes, what is Earth's standard youth athletic curriculum? Emma hesitated, as if unsure why that mattered. Depends where you grow up, sir. Give an example. She shrugged. Running, climbing, swimming, ball sports, balance drills, strength training, sometimes martial arts. The Silith cadet beside me whispered, For soldiers? Emma heard him and looked genuinely puzzled. No, for kids. The room changed after that. Not loudly, not dramatically. It was smaller than fear and sharper than respect. It was the first crack in a belief system. Then Brack made the second mistake of the morning. He pointed at the arena and said, Put her against me. The sentence landed in Combat Hall 3 like Brack had thrown a weight onto glass. Put her against me. For words, simple enough for every translator to handle, stupid enough for every species to understand. Emma turned toward him slowly, still catching her breath from the arena sequence, one loose strand of hair stuck against her cheek. She did not look offended. That was the worst part. If she had glared, Brack could have called it fear wearing anger. If she had backed away, he could have rebuilt the room around himself. But she only looked curious, like he had suggested switching from one school exercise to another. Instructor Vale said nothing at first. His silence was not approval. It was calculation. The academy had rules about cross-species contact drills, and most of them existed because someone, somewhere, had once confused pride with policy. Cadets could spar only under matched profiles, protective fields, restricted force, and instructor oversight. Brack knew that. Everyone knew that. But Brack also knew the class was watching his reputation leak out across the floor. Avorga did not survive humiliation by standing still. He stepped closer to the arena rim, forearms relaxed, voice loud enough for the observation glass to hear. She finished a machine pattern. Good. Machines are predictable. Let her try a thinking opponent. The Silith row shifted back half a step. My own throat went dry. Not because I believed Emma was helpless anymore. That illusion had died somewhere between the orange lane and the word soccer. No, I was nervous because Brack was not asking for a lesson. He was asking for a performance with himself as the hero, and he had not realized the script had changed. Vale finally spoke. Cadet Brack, this is an assessment period, not a dominance display. Brack bowed his head, just enough to pretend respect. Then assess her, sir. If Earth training is so impressive, let us see adaptive response under live pressure. Clever. Ugly, but clever. He addressed his ego in academy language. Vale looked at Emma. Cadet Hayes, you may decline without penalty. Every eye turned to her. That was the trap, of course. Decline, and Brack would call her performance a trick for the rest of term. Accept, and she would step into a ring with someone twice her size, for arms, heavy world bones, and a public need to make her small again. Emma wiped her palms on her training pants, then asked, What are the rules, sir? Not do I have to. Not is he allowed. What are the rules? Vale's crest twitched. Restricted contact. No joint attacks. No head strikes. No lethal force. Objective is positional control. 3 clean boundary touches or 1 full pin ends the round. Safe. Controlled. Still dangerous to pride. Brack smiled again. The room disliked that smile now. Funny how fast a crowd can change when the target stops looking like prey. Emma nodded. Okay. Brack climbed into the arena first, rolling his shoulders, letting the platform take his weight with a dramatic thud. The floor registered him immediately. Vorga profile loaded. Strength advantage, high. Reach advantage, extreme. Mass advantage, critical. The display was not trying to be insulting. It was just honest. Then Emma stepped in opposite him. Human profile loaded. Strength comparison, insufficient data. Adaptation rating, manual review pending. That got a ripple from the class. Even the Academy software sounded unsure what she was. Vale set the gravity to 1 standard, neutral field, padded boundary, observation drones active. Begin on tone. Brack lowered into a wide stance, all 4 arms spread, blocking half the arena by existing. Emma stood differently. Feet shoulder-width apart. Knees soft. Hands up, but not clenched. Her eyes moved from his shoulders to his hips to his feet. Measuring. Always measuring. The tone sounded. Brack advanced with the confidence of a closing door. Emma moved sideways. Not away. Around. Brack adjusted, faster than something his size should move, sweeping one upper arm across her path to guide her toward the boundary. Emma stepped inside the reach instead of outside it. The class inhaled. Brack's lower hand dropped toward her shoulder for control. She turned before it arrived, placed one palm lightly against his wrist, and redirected just enough that his own momentum carried him 1 step past her. Not a throw. Not a strike. Barely even contact. But the arena chirped. Boundary touch. Cadet Brack, 1. Silence. Brack stared at the glowing line under his foot as if it had betrayed him. Emma stepped back to center. Sorry, she said automatically. That apology nearly broke the room. Brack's face darkened. Vale's voice cut in at once. Continue. The second exchange was faster. Brack did not lumber now. He pressured. 2 arms high, 2 low, using reach to remove options, herding Emma toward the padded wall. For 3 seconds it worked. For 3 seconds, the old universe came back. Big meant strong. Strong meant control. Then Emma dropped her weight, pivoted under his outside arm, and tapped the boundary marker behind him before he understood she had switched sides. The arena chirped again. Boundary touch. Cadet Brack, 2. The sound was small. The damage was not. The second chirp did something strange to Brack. It did not make him louder. It made him quiet. That was far worse. Loud Brack was a bully with an audience. Quiet Brack was a cadet remembering he had trained since childhood to never be made foolish in public, especially not by a 5'5" human girl whose file still had beginner classification attached to it. Emma noticed the change. Of course she did. Her shoulders lowered a fraction. Her feet shifted, and her expression sharpened from polite participation into something more focused. Not anger. Preparation. Instructor Vale stepped closer to the arena boundary. Cadet Brack, he warned, control. Brack gave one stiff nod without taking his eyes off Emma. Yes, sir. The tone sounded for the third exchange, and this time Brack did not rush. He circled, slowly, forearms spread, knees bent, weight centered, forcing Emma to turn with him. The class relaxed for half a breath. This was better. This was strategy. This was how a larger opponent should handle a smaller one. No dramatic lunges. No wasted reach. Just pressure, angles, and patience. Emma mirrored him, but not perfectly. She let him gain 2 feet. Then 3. Then 5. Her back neared the boundary padding. Brack's eyes narrowed. He thought he had her. So did I. So did nearly everyone. That is what made the next second so rude. Brack stepped in with 2 arms low, not grabbing, just blocking the escape lanes. His upper right arm hovered ready to guide her shoulder. It was textbook positional control. Vale might have praised it under different circumstances. Emma looked trapped. Then she moved toward him, not away from danger, into the smallest space he had left open because his body was too large to close it quickly. She turned her hips, slipped between his lower arms, placed 1 foot behind his lead heel, and stopped. That was all. She stopped. Brack's own forward momentum did the embarrassing part. He tried to correct, but his feet were arranged around a human who was no longer where his instincts said she should be. He stumbled 1 step. Not a fall. Not an injury. Just 1 ugly, public step outside the line. The arena chirped a 3rd time. Match complete. Winner, Cadet Hayes. For 2 seconds, nobody moved. Then the room erupted, not in cheers, not exactly, but in disbelief wearing 15 different accents. The Silith were talking over one another. The Vorgaro looked horrified. The observation drone spun in tight circles above the arena, capturing every angle of Brack standing outside the boundary with all 4 arms slightly raised, as if the universe had just searched him for dignity and found nothing. Emma stepped back immediately. Good match, she said, because apparently humans had a ritual where they politely thanked you after rearranging your worldview. Brack stared down at her. His jaw worked once. Twice. I thought he might argue. I thought he might demand a reset, blame the floor, blame the rules, blame Earth witchcraft, which honestly would have sounded reasonable by then. Instead, he looked at Instructor Vale. Vale looked at the display. The display, traitor that it was, replayed the final movement in slow motion. There was no malfunction, no illegal contact, no hidden tool, just timing, leverage, and the brutal truth that mass is only useful when it arrives where the opponent remains. Vale's voice came out quieter than before. Result confirmed. That should have ended it. It did not. Because the Academy system, still running its manual review of Emma's earlier performance, chose that exact moment to finish recalculating. The main display above the hall flashed white. Every conversation died at once. New classification assigned. Human Cadet Emma Hayes. Adaptive Threat Index. Provisional Tier 7. Training Recommendation. Senior Hazard Supervision Required. Someone near the back whispered, Tier 7? Another voice answered, That is for battlefield specialists. Emma looked up at the words and frowned like the system had made a typo. Sir, she asked, is that bad? Vale did not answer immediately. His eyes were fixed on the final line now appearing beneath the recommendation. Earth Youth Athletics may produce combat-relevant adaptive reflexes without formal military instruction. The sentence was dry. Academic. Almost boring. And it terrified us more than Brack losing ever could. Because Brack had not been beaten by a soldier. He had been outmaneuvered by someone who learned movement on playgrounds, soccer fields, and rainy sidewalks. Instructor Vale finally turned toward Emma, and for the first time that morning, he did not look annoyed. He looked careful. Cadet Hayes, he said, how many humans receive this kind of childhood training? Emma thought about it for a moment. A lot, sir. The hall went silent again. Not because one human had won. Because suddenly, horribly, we understood she was not the exception Earth had sent us. She might have been the sample. That was the moment the Academy stopped studying Emma Hayes and started studying Earth. Not officially at first. Officially, Combat Hall 3 returned to scheduled assessment after Instructor Vale dismissed the live match, ordered Brack to medical evaluation for pride-related silence, and told the rest of us to prepare for our own drills. Unofficially, Nobody cared about the drills anymore. The Silith runners kept staring at Emma's feet. The Vorga cadets kept checking the boundary lines like the floor might confess to favoritism. I watched 3 observation assistants replay her movement frame by frame behind the glass, slowing each step until the human girl looked less like a cadet and more like a problem wearing academy shoes. Emma, for her part, seemed completely unaware that she had just vandalized galactic confidence. She stood near the water station, drank from a paper cup, and asked the nutrition dispenser if it had anything with electrolytes. Electrolytes. The room had reclassified her as a Tier 7 adaptive threat, and she was worried about sports drinks. Instructor Vale approached her with the caution usually reserved for unstable equipment. "Cadet Hayes," he said, "your file lists no formal combat certification." "Correct, sir." "No military family background." "No, sir." "No enhanced genetics, reflex implants, or gravity conditioning beyond Earth standard." Emma shook her head. "Just normal school, weekend soccer, some hiking, and my dad made me mow the lawn in summer." The translation matrix paused on lawn, then helpfully defined it as decorative grass field maintained through repetitive manual cutting. That did not help. Vale stared at her. "Your father assigned endurance labor as childhood routine?" Emma blinked. "It was just chores, sir." A whisper moved through the room. "Chores." Earth children performed repetitive endurance labor casually. Earth children played high-speed coordination games on uneven ground. Earth children climbed, ran, swam, balanced, carried, dodged, fell, stood up, and called it growing up. We had spent generations building controlled training systems to simulate hardship, and humans had apparently packaged it into after-school activities and weekend punishment. Vale turned slowly toward the class, and something in his posture had changed. Not fear exactly. Respect wearing armor. "Cadets," he said, voice carrying through the speakers, "revise your assumptions." No one laughed this time. Not one click, trill, hiss, or cough. Emma looked uncomfortable with the attention, which only made it worse. Monsters were supposed to roar. Predators were supposed to posture. Champions were supposed to demand recognition. Humans, apparently, apologized, asked questions, drank water, and rewired your entire understanding of strength before lunch. The Academy report reached the Defense Council by evening. By morning, Earth's exchange program had been suspended pending strategic review. By the end of the week, every human recreational activity database had been classified for military analysis. Soccer became movement warfare. Dodgeball became projectile evasion training. Gymnastics became spatial control under rotation. Swimming became resistance adaptation. Hiking became terrain endurance. Even playground tag received a threat notation after an analyst realized human children willingly train pursuit and escape patterns for fun. Emma hated that part. She said tag was not a combat doctrine. The council disagreed. Years later, when the Academy taught first contact psychology, they showed the recording of that day. They did not show it because Emma defeated Brack. They showed it because of what happened after. The silence. The recalculation. The slow, humiliating realization that humanity had not hidden its strength. We had simply mistaken ordinary for harmless. We saw a small girl from a blue planet and thought she was the exception. Then we looked at Earth and understood the nightmare. She was not their warrior caste. She was not their elite specimen. She was not their warning shot. Emma Hayes was what happened when a human child grew up playing games on a planet that never promised safety. That is why Instructor Vale changed the Academy manual. That is why the beginner lane was renamed. That is why no cadet, from any species, ever laughed at an Earthborn transfer again. Because on that morning, in Combat Hall 3, we learned the sentence every officer now memorizes before meeting humans. Earth does not produce weak species. Earth produces monsters who think they are normal.